Hey, if you're wondering what these two buttons are for, then watch this video. So you might have 918, DS918, DS920 or 720, and you might never know that there is a cache actually thing available on your NAS, and they usually are on Synology. They are located at the bottom. So if you remove these things covers, you can actually use M.2 SSDs. These are NVMe type of SSDs, which is faster than SSDs, to enable cache on your Synology. And then you may ask, okay, what is the cache then? And cache is something that is stored on a SSD. And why SSD? Because SSD is so much faster than your hard drives inside your NAS. That's why any data stored on SSD would be accessed, either stored or read from the SSD much quicker compared to hard drive. So if you got SATA SSD, that would be around 500 megabytes seconds, whereas hard drive speed is usually around 200-250 megabytes seconds. So you get twice of the speed for reading your data from SSD. If you have NVMe type of SSD, that's already, we're talking 2000 or even up to 5000 megabytes a second read speed and write speed. So there is a massive difference when you want to store files or access files. So the cache would mean that anything what you write to a NAS first lands on these SSDs. So you don't need to waste your time accessing the hard drive and putting the data on and scrubbing onto the hard drive. Same when you're reading data, you are gonna read this data from SSD, which is much quicker. And if you are having applications where you need really fast access to your media, to your hard drive or any sort of media, then you might consider cache. But we're going to talk about that a little later. But this is what cache is basically just storing your data on SSD, the most frequently asked access data on SSD to improve the performance. Either it's IOPS or data transfer speeds. Most likely it's always going to be improving your IOPS, which is a responsiveness to your NAS. So can I have it? You might have that question. So if you're focusing on Synology side, then if you have any sort of Plus series model, you can have a cache. There are different kinds of cache available. You can have NVMe or SATA or this M.2 sort of SSD type of cache. Or you can have 2.5 inch SSD cache, which would look like your laptop drive, the thin drive you got inside laptop. The same standard is used for SSDs. Those are usually SATA speed. There is something called YouTube that we're not going to go too much in details. QNAP supports that, but most often sort of available SSD in 2.5 inch is going to be SATA type of drive. And can I have it? Yes, if you got Plus series Synology, like 918 Plus, 920 Plus, here you can see, I'll put on the screen, Plus series models which come with M.2 slot available on the board. Like you can just open the cover and put the SSD inside. So on 19 series it will be 1619 XS. You would have that on the board. That's a rack mount solution. If on the desktop models, you would have on 918, 920, 5-bay 1019 plus, 1520 plus, 720, which is 2-bay, 420, which is 4-bay, on the 21 plus series, 8 bays, which is 1821, 1621 XS series. These are the models which come with this slot at the bottom or on the side when you remove the drive bays. If you don't have these slots, you may think like, okay, maybe I can't have this cache, but you can. You can have 2.5 inch cache, which means that if you have more than 2 bays, or you could maybe even 2 bays, but you could use 2 or 3 bays for hard drives and a spare bay or 2, more likely 2 if you want read and write cache, you could use for SSD cache. So you would put 2.5 inch SSDs in there and enable cache, and It wouldn't be as fast as NVMe cache, but it would be available. You can go up to, I think, 11 or 12 drives or 10 drives, some of the SSDs in a cache. So if you've got more base available, you can actually allocate more base for the caching. It's all possible. If you don't want to use base for caching, and these are the options where you could have All Plus series, recommend professional series, XS with enterprise type of models would enable cache using base. But if you don't want to use a hard drive base for caching, you can always use PCIe based. Like when you have PCIe slot available at the back of your NAS, you can usually use a M.2D2, M.2D18. Yeah, these are very complicated, not all the numbers, but it's a simple card you put into your NAS and you can have a cache. Some cards have like dual sort of option, like E10 M20 T1 will allow you to have 10 gigabit port and cache on the same card. So if you have only one PCIe slot on your NAS, you can have actually both things. So 10 gigabit faster Ethernet and cache. And here's a list if you want to have a look then which models do support PCIe cards, because some models will support the card, but it will only support SATA type of SSDs, and some will support NVMe type of SSDs in the cache. So this is something you need to pay attention when you're choosing a card or you're having a certain model number of a NAS. You'll need to make sure that you get the right SSD, because if you have a card which will support SATA or NVMe, you need to make sure you get the right SSD for it, so it would work. Let's move on. Do I need it even? Do I need the cache? And the question is, the answer is probably it depends what you want to achieve. If you think that cache is something what's going to speed up your NAS in general, then this is not going to be really answer. It's always going to be something to do with IOPS, which is like input-output operations. So if you are running something like file server with loads of people connecting, like 10 plus, 20 plus, 50 plus people connecting and accessing the same data, so most likely this data will be you'll benefit if this data will be stored on SSD, because then instead of every time going on hard drive and finding this data where it is located 100 times a day, it will just live on this SSD. So you can just quickly grab the file and serve it to a client, whoever is requesting it. Same with iSCSI, Fiber Channel clients, Synology virtual machines especially as well, because when you're having virtual machines, it means you're installing Windows or Linux or something like that, and there's always these temporary files, cache files, where on Windows you're all the time like saving and accessing all the time these tiny files, and those most of the time those are exactly the same files pushed forwards and backwards all the time. So if you store these files on SSD cache, that will improve virtual machine performance. If you have a database server or website with database, also the same thing. People will be accessing the same data all the time from your database. So if it's living on the cache as well, it will benefit and will boost the performance massively. If you're enabling snapshots as well, and also regular backup tasks with Synology Active Backup for Business. That's also the thing, because this repetitious data, again, when it's the same data, it's better if it's using cache. Mail services, same thing. It's all the time accessing that. If you're like going in the conversation forwards and backwards, the same data is usually added in the at the background of this email, so it will be actually beneficial if it goes through the cache as well. When you should not be using cache and considering cache, if you think that this will improve the data transfer speeds when you are transferring large files like ISO files, movies or something like that, this is not something what you're probably going to be accessing all the time. So you would not benefit from cache if you just want to speed up your data transfer speeds. If you're just on your own or just few people there pushing forwards and backwards few movies. That's not going to help. File server with mostly sequential access, so that wouldn't help, and video streaming or playback as well. So if you're playing, because some people might think like, will it improve my Plex or something? It would improve slightly the way it organizes things, so it would be quickly getting the icons and metadata sorted. But when you're actually trying to stream or transcode something, this is not something what will improve the performance, because it can't be really cached. Unless there's 50 users maybe accessing the same movie, then yeah, then you could do, but just in a home environment, having SSD cache will not improve your Plex performance. How much cache do I need then? That's a question. And if you don't know how much cache you need, and you just got a NAS, or you're planning to buy a NAS, then maybe get a NAS first and use SSD Cache Advisor app, which is going to tell you exactly, it's going to look at the way you are accessing data, and it's going to calculate how much data actually you're pushing forwards and backwards. So it's going to tell you exactly that you need either 200 gigabytes of cache or 500 gigabytes of cache, based on your use case. But if you want to get cache sorted already before you buy a NAS, you want to set it all up, then you can do some sort of predictions. Either you can use your router, so you can check the traffic going through the network, how much data is being accessed every day. That's one way of checking how much data is like written and read on your network. Another option would be just doing estimated guess, like educated guess of, if you're working with AutoCAD projects or video editing projects, then you might look that average size of the project is like 100 gigabytes or 50 gigabytes. So probably this is a size of cache I might need to work with. So that's how you can tell how much cache you need in a home environment. Most likely that you won't need anything more than 200 gigabytes of cache. 500 gigabytes already the push, if you want to be on the safe side. And then you might ask, okay, then which SSDs actually fit? Is there some sort of compatibility issues? And there is not really. The only difference you need to consider is that what's the endurance and performance consistency and power loss protection. But in a home environment, you might even not consider these things, because if you have only a few people accessing, or you on your own, then, as we said, the cache wouldn't help at all anyway. Or if you have some little website being run on your NAS at home, then then you might have some simple cache. But to be on the safe side, you can just get Samsung Evo Plus or just normal Evo SSD. They make 2.5 inch and M.2 type of SSD. You can go for Synology, which is already an enterprise kind of type of SSD, but it's going to cost you more. This is already more for advanced solutions, versus 10 plus users in a business environment, maybe not for home. It might be too pricey. Or you can go for Synology, Seagate Iron Wolf M.2s or 2.5 inch SSDs. These three type of drives, SSDs would work. Any would work, but if you want to really perfection the performance, then you might go more in details. How long this SSD gonna last? How much you can write to it? What's the life expectancy and warranties and all these things? But every M.2 will work. In no regards compatibility list, it's just going to work. The only difference is going to be the performance and how long it's going to last. And the last thing what we can touch is like, how do you set it up? And on the Synology, it's very easy. You go to Storage Manager, SSD Cache, hit Create button, and then choose which SSDs you want to merge together in a RAID. So you can go, I think, up to 10 SSDs if you've got some big rack mount or multi-base solution. You can allocate those SSDs into if it's two SSDs, RAID 1. If it's more drives, like 3 SSDs or 5, then you go for RAID 5 protection or RAID 6. And then you're going to be having a choice about having a read-only cache or read or write cache. So what's the difference between those things is going to be that when you're reading something, you just want those files to be accessed from the SSD in those situations when you're only reading. But if you're like doing something like video editing and you need this high performing solution where everything is quickly just landing on SSD first before it goes to the HDDs, hard drives, then you go for a read and write option, because then everything will be written on SSD first. And that's why also this RAID 1 is important, because if one of these SSD fail, you got this cache data protected, because everything first lands on your SSDs and then goes on the hard drive. So these are the things you'll need to choose, read only. And that's why I saw people asking like, okay, I've got 2 slots at the bottom of this NAS. Do I need 1 or 2 of these M.2 SSDs in there? And the answer is, if you want, you can have just 1 there, but it's going to enable only this read cache option. If you want to read and write, it will not let you create because that would be so dangerous to lose your data. That's why they're asking you to have 2 SSDs for write caching. Okay, I hope this was actually helpful. If you've got any questions, you can go to NAS Compares. On the right hand side there is a form you can fill and put your question in there. You can also go to Ask NAS Compares. There is a community run question sort of service where others might help you as well. You can always just send the email to info.nascompares as well if you want direct response. And I hope this was helpful, and cheerio.